Well, welcome back, all my Advanced Squad Leader friends out there. This is your host, idjester. Welcome back to another episode of 15-Minute Rules for your Advanced Squad Leader. Unfortunately, most of these episodes tend to go over 15 minutes. I'm trying to keep them around the 15-minute time, and I swear to you, one of these episodes will be less than 15 minutes, maybe even this one. Well, welcome back to Part 14. We're talking about residual firepower and all the rules associated with that last time. Unfortunately, I missed one of the most important rules. That is 8.26. So I want to bring that to your attention before we move on. The effects of the die roll modifier. And you can see most of this paragraph is in green, which means it's very, very important. The amount of the residual firepower left by any attack is reduced by one IFT column for each positive die roll modifier caused solely by conditions outside of the target location. So some of the examples they can give you are like if your unit's CX, buttoned up, if it's stunned, if it's got a positive leadership modifier, or a hex side or a bridge TEM of the target location. So what's going to happen here is if you have this situation, if you normally, let's say, if we look at this heavy machine gun here, let's look at our squad here first. This squad here is a 6 firepower. We're going to assume that it's going to use its firepower. Let's just move it up here and give you kind of an example here. If this unit was CEX for whatever reason, let's just put a 6 counter on there. If these German units moved into this hex right here, and this unit defensive first fired on it, it is going to it's going to do its attack of 6 firepower, blah blah blah, but then it's going to leave half of its firepower rounded down. So half of 6 is 3. There is no 3 column. So he's going to leave 2 residual firepower behind. But because this unit is CX'd, there's going to be a +1 die roll modifier. So you're going to lose another column. So it's going to actually go down to the 1 column. The same thing will happen for if you're shooting through grain when grain is in season. I don't think we have any grain on this map board. But if we had grain in a hex and we were shooting through the grain, again, that's a +1 die roll modifier. That's outside the target location hex. So that is going to steer us a column to the left. So you have to watch for your final residual firepower total. Can be less than you think once you add in all of your other modifiers that are out there. So that should finish up the residual firepower section. And we're going to now move on to say hello to my little friend. Of course, what everybody's been waiting on. Section A of the rulebook, subsection 9.22, Firelanes. So Firelanes, we're going to look at all the rules associated with Firelanes, talk about them for a few minutes here. Whenever a defender declares a defensive first fire attack with a good order support weapon machine gun that is manned by an unpinned infantry, he may also declare a fire lane with that machine gun if it's not already marked with a first or final fire counter and is firing within its normal range and at the same level target. All that is very, very important, and we're going to look at that here in a few minutes. You must declare this at the time of your attack, because you will see down here the exception is once you declare it, if you cower during the attack, no fire lane is placed, even though you have declared the fire. You've declared a fire lane, no fire lane is placed. Fire groups are NA. You can't do it. Each machine gun must create a separate fire lane, even if they're using the same hex or hex grain IFT die roll as another. The fire lane residual firepower counter exerts a unique form of residual firepower in its location and in every same level location of the fire lane hex grain between the counter and the MG that is within the machine gun's normal range and in the line of sight of its manning infantry. See, this is paragraphs like this. I can understand why people now read the Advanced Squad Leader book and say to themselves, WTF. What the heck does that mean? Well, we're going to explain that to you, folks. Just be patient with this because some of this stuff, wow, yeah. Even I get like, are you kidding me? How could you not say that? I mean, you know, it reminds me of that song that guy, say what you want to 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 say, you know, whatever. Anyways, a fire lane's residual firepower is equal to the firepower column to the left of the firepower column normally used by the machine gun's firepower. So if your machine gun normally does a 6 attack, such as this one here in M3, it is going to leave 4 residual firepower into its fire lane. So you can see that these are quite powerful, unlike the squad that is a 6 is only going to leave 2 residual. When you have a machine gun that has 6 firepower, it is going to leave 4 residual. So a big difference between the 6 firepower of a squad and the 6 firepower of a machine gun. Alternate grain hex. Now this is crazy rule that just wording just doesn't make any sense. So I'm just going to give you an example of what the heck they're talking about here. I'm going to move this back here. So it is obviously the German player's movement phase, and the Russian player is obviously the defensive player. The German player decides to activate a unit in H3 and move it into I3. At that point, the Russian player decides that he's going to defensive first fire with his heavy machine gun, and he also is going to declare a fire lane with this machine gun. Now you'll notice that how the direction to get from this hex to this hex is along this hex side right here, and along this hex side and into this hex here. So the bullets obviously don't go down the line and then attack this hex, and then down the line and then attack this hex, and then go down the line and attack this hex. So basically, when you create a fire lane with a machine gun this way, what you're going to do is you're going to decide if you're going to be using the alternate left or right side of your hex side for the attack. And your counters here in Vessel actually do a wonderful job of kind of showing you and explaining this. If I right click the fire lane counter, you will notice if I go to alternate grain, it's going to put the little arrow down on the bottom or on the left side. If I do it again, it's actually going to go to the right side. So what this represents is if I'm firing down the hex side here, I'm either going to choose the left side, which is going to be L3, K3, J3, and I3, and H3, and G3. So I'm choosing the left side, or I'm going to choose the right side, depending on if I want to use the left or right. Now the only restriction is you must have the target location in the hex side that you choose. In this case, he's actually straight down the hex side, so you can choose either the left or the right hand side. It's up to you. If he was, say, in, let's say he moved from G4 into H3, you would then have to choose the left hex side alternate grain because your target is in the location on the left hand side. So you would have to choose H3, I3, J3, K3, L3 as your fire lane locations. And the exact opposite, if it was up here in H2, you would have to choose the one on the right. So basically, that whole paragraph is just telling you that when you're firing down the hex side like this, you can choose either the left or the right hex side based upon where your unit, your target location is located. If it's straight down the hex side, you can choose both the left or the right. It's up to you, but you're going to place your fire lane counter showing if it's the left or it is the right. And of course, these can only go out to your normal range, as we looked at in our rules here. The big difference between residual firepower and fire lane residual firepower, and that fire lane residual firepower is treated as normal residual firepower, except as stated otherwise. The residual firepower of a fire lane is never reduced by the effects of a die roll modifier, which we just went over at the beginning of this episode. Because fire lane residual firepower is traced from its source, the effect of hindrance, hex sides, bridge die roll modifiers are resolved as die roll modifiers to the residual firepower attack. No CX leadership hero die roll modifier applies to a fire lane residual firepower attack. Fire lane residual firepower attacks cannot cause the fire to cower and need not be made if they can cause no effect. So that's kind of important in that if your opponent has a very high sniper number, like a 5 or 6 or 7, the attack that you're choosing, that your opponent has caused, that can cause no effect to the enemy unit, so you do not need to roll that attack. And finally, cancellation. The machine gun's fire lane residual firepower counter is removed only if the machine gun malfunctions, its manning infantry is broken, eliminated, or pinned, or at the end of the current movement phase, whichever occurs first. The machine gun malfunctions whenever its fire lane residual firepower attack die roll is also the original malfunction die roll. Its manning infantry may use subsequent first fire, final protective fire after establishing the fire lane only if a triple point blank fire or CC reactionary fire situation occurs. So that's kind of the deficit with this is basically you're sacrificing these two units aren't going to be able to do anything else the whole turn other than hold their buttons down and fire down their fire lane. That's all they get to do. Unless, of course, some extenuating circumstances come up. Somebody enters your location, or you have a CC reactionary fire attack. But normally, basically, you are going to be getting just that squad and your machine gun are going to do nothing the rest of the turn other than blast down their fire lane and shoot at everything that moves. And hopefully you're going to do lots and lots of damage because, as you can see, your fire from your residual fire lane is only one column down as opposed to half column down. So if your machine gun normally did 8 firepower, you're only going to lose one column, so then it's going to leave 6 residual, as opposed to a squad which has 8 firepower. They're going to lose half. Half of 8 is 4, so they're going to actually leave 4 residual. So your machine guns will leave a lot bigger number for residual firepower, and not only that, but they will leave a huge line normally if you set up your machine guns in proper spots, where you will get multiple attacks. You can see that this location here in L6 has a nice heavy machine gun here. If this German unit moves into this hex here, we declare a defensive fire attack. We're going to do our attack, and then we're going to leave a fire lane. Our fire lane is going to be a 4 firepower here, so it's going to leave 4 firepower. In fact, we will oops, wrong way. Let's move it. Let's keep going. Keep going. You can do it. Yes. All right. So it's going to leave 4 firepower at every one of these hexes. And in fact, all the hexes adjacent, or I should say the first hex of your fire lane is double that because you get your point blank fire. So it's going to be 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 8. into that hex because it's adjacent to the machine gun. So you get your point blank fire. So that pretty much covers fire lanes and residual firepower. I think we covered most of the rules associated with that. They're not very difficult. One thing to keep in mind, though, is if this squad here in L6 is in level 2, remember you can only do same level, so you're not going to be able to create a fire lane with this. Where'd that squad go? Disappeared on me. You're not going to be able to create a fire lane with this machine gun here because it's not at the same level as all your target hexes. So yeah, it could be a problem. So you have to think about, is it better for your machine guns to be up high in a building where they have better range, better sight of multiple units, or is it better for them to be at the same level where they can create fire lanes and leave lots of residual fire lane firepower out there? You can see that in this situation here, there's lots of areas where you can have quite a long string of uninterrupted firepower that's going to cause your opponent, anytime they enter into the hex, throughout the movement phase, to take an attack. So the difference between residual firepower and fire lane firepower are quite a big difference. Hopefully, between the last episode and this episode, you're able to understand a few of the differences. One of the main differences, when normal residual firepower, you're going to take half of your firepower. And the fire lane, you're going to just take one column to the left. The other big difference is that 8.26, the amount of your residual firepower left by your attack is going to be altered by a column for each condition outside of your target location. That gives you a plus to your to hit, while your fire lanes are not going to be reduced by the effects of die roll modifiers. No CX leader die roll modifier applies to a fire lane residual firepower attack, and fire lane residual firepower attacks cannot cause the fire to cower and need only be made if it would cause no effect. So lots of good information there. Hopefully this has been the best 15 minutes of your day, and I appreciate you guys giving me a watch. And we will see you next time, where I think we're finally able to talk and show an example of one of the most important things in the advanced squad leader system, and that is the movement phase and the defensive fire phase. These two phases, I would say, are one of the most important things in ASL to understand and be able to operate and perform correctly to be successful in your ASL scenarios. The movement phase, defensive fire phase, and the advanced fire phase are basically the heart, the soul behind ASL. The other phases just kind of set up these three phases, and being able to use those other phases to get ready for these three phases. But these are the big boys. The movement phase, the defensive fire phase, and the advanced fire phase are the three main thrusts that will probably determine how well you do in your scenario. So we are going to look in depth next time. We're going to look at actually doing a complete movement phase for the German player, and we're going to analyze different situations for the Russian player, do defensive fire, subsequent first fire, kind of put all the rules into a neat little package. And probably going to take us a couple episodes to go through, because we're going to kind of go through slow and kind of talk about strategy, talk about how things could be affected, and hopefully once do a few of those episodes, you'll have a better understanding of how the movement phase, the defensive fire phase, and of course the advanced fire phase all fit in together, because they kind of blend in, they kind of just move from one to the next in a a nice kind of like unfolding a napkin, and that there's a prize in the middle, and it's how you unwrap the napkin determines what kind of prize you're going to have in the middle. So again, I'm sorry, I apologize that this has gone over 15 minutes. I think I'm just going to change this to the 20-minute advanced squad leader system because I can't ever get them done in 15 minutes, but it's usually because we're going over a lot of important things, and I don't want to just gloss over it and rush through it and not explain things enough where people still have questions and still have doubts in their mind. I'd rather spend the time, a few extra minutes, and spend the time and talk about things and make sure I go over everything so everybody understands the lesson that we learned during that episode. So apologize it ran a few minutes late, but we will see you next episode where we finally get to move some German units around and see if we can blow them away. So we'll see you then, folks. Thanks for watching.